I'm Yves Voetals, working for the Belgian Federal Police. I'm leading the Child Abuse Unit team, and also I'm the driver of the European Impact Project combating child sexual exploitation around the world.
Yeah, my name is Jos Fleury. I work for a private company, CS in the Netherlands. We supply systems to law enforcement, but I'm here to present the AviaTOR project, which is a project funded by the European Commission. So I represent the project now and not the company. And we are, so we heard from Jean-Victor and Mauro as being on the trust and safety side. We are on the receiving side of reports. So I work for law enforcement. Yves is handling reports on a daily basis. Reports specifically on child sexual abuse material that was found on platforms online. And we like to explain how that process works and what the system is that we developed for that. And also what the challenges are, because they're definitely different from the challenges that providers have. So the AviaTOR project, and it's all about processing NCMEC industry reports using AI. And what are NCMEC industry reports? Well, there's a US legislation that is there already for a while, and that basically makes it mandatory for providers that have their offices in America to report if they see illegal content online, specifically child abuse material. They don't have to look for it, but if they run into it, they report it. And the clearinghouse for those reports is NCMEC, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. They geolocalize the reports and forward them to countries where the person that is reported is living. And just to give you an idea, Yves, how many reports do you receive on a yearly basis from NCMEC?
Last year I received 23,000, and I think this year we go for 30,000.
Yeah, so it's really large quantities that have to be handled by law enforcement. And so the American law is for providers located in America. They get a fairly limited fine if they don't report. It's $150,000, and the second time $300,000. Just as a comparison, the law they are discussing for Europe applies to all providers that want to do business in European countries, and the fine is, I think, 6% of the worldwide income. So it's a different nature, and providers, of course, are also more worried about that law coming up. So, as I said, the provider only reports when they run into something. That's the law, but actually most providers, like Facebook, Google, Microsoft, they actually look for illegal content on their platforms. And they do that by using photo DNA with databases of known illegal content. And they do that using some form of AI to see if content is illegal. And they process reports from the public, of course, and they have content moderators. And they all do that, and in our opinion, on the receiving side, as being better safe than sorry. So there's relatively a lot of reports that are not child abuse or they're borderline child abuse, but they're still reported to law enforcement. Law enforcement still have to deal with all these reports. So that's a big challenge. So the AI that detects potential illegal content on the provider platform is not necessarily the same AI that law enforcement needs to really get to the most urgent and most serious reports. So you often hear about the NCMEC figures, 32 million reports, 80 to 90 million content items, but a lot is duplicate. So that's only 10% of that is original material. And it's important that systems that handle these reports can deduplicate so that law enforcement only has to look at the material that's really unique and that they have to handle. So a report coming from a provider, what is it? It's mostly in a PDF file with information about the reported person, like a username, nickname, telephone numbers, IP addresses, and also the illegal content found, so in terms of videos and images. And it comes as a readable, in a readable form, and it comes in as a computer readable form. So what we have built, and I will try to limit this to as little as possible, we have limited time, is a system that in 3 steps can help the investigator to go through the content and focus on the content that's really important. So first of all, we connect directly to the NECMEC web API or to Europol to read in all the reports. And then the first processing is that we basically deduplicate. We detect which material is already known to law enforcement, and then we use AI, CSAM and text classifiers to find potentially new material that needs to be looked at first. And we also check if a report contains illegal content and whether a report, the reported person, because there's always a person reported, the user of the platform, whether the reported person is identifiable, because if it's not illegal or you can't identify the person, there's no use for law enforcement to process the reports. Then we can group reports on common properties like username, IP addresses, the material, and then we present it to law enforcement to go over the material and to decide whether it's worthwhile to create a case and, for instance, create a search warrant to go to the house of the reported person to check if he's a real downloader, creator of child abuse material. So those steps we do in the system, and we have developed AI, and I will come to that in a little bit, to help law enforcement, but the system never takes a decision by itself. So it is content moderation, but we use that to prioritize the report, not to take a decision on the report. So basically, all reports still have to be processed by law enforcement, but we make a pre-selection of the highest priority ones. Let me skip through this, otherwise I'll make it too long. So in AviaTOR, we have AI for the detection of CSAM. And the problem with creating AI for CSAM is that as a tech company, you don't have access to material. And you don't want access to material because it's all horrible material to look at. So the way we do it in the AviaTOR project, we have a setup where 2 hotlines, the Dutch hotline Off Limits and the Belgian hotline Child Focus. They work closely with the Belgian and the Dutch police to go through material and to annotate that material based on the universal classification schema. And that's a project that's currently run by INCYBER, and it's meant to set up a common understanding of what is CSAM and how do you classify that. So in that process, we are categorizing around 20,000 images at the moment, and we are training a classifier on that. And that classifier will be used in the AviaTOR system to help detect new material. We do the same for text, where we look for keywords. We look if we can find the profession of the reported person, whether there's a likelihood that that person has contact with children or has communication with children that potentially contain grooming. Text is more difficult because you can have all kinds of languages. And in images, you only have the image or the video to judge. So I'm not saying it's easy, but it's more deterministic. So there's a lot of projects going on at the moment also that look at different languages to make classifiers for. So I think I will leave it with that on the AviaTOR side. And Yves, maybe you can talk a little bit about how it works on your side. You're using AviaTOR, but you get also these all these reports in?
Yes. Well, first of all, prioritization is very important. Just said why. Because you can't manage all the reports you're getting in. To give you an example, last year about 27% of the reports were illegal, enfin, more or less illegal. All the rest was, excuse my English, rubbish. And this year, in the first 3 months, I'm going down to 10% illegal material, and the rest is rubbish. The number of reports is going up, and the number of illegal things about illegal reports are coming down very fastly. So it's very important because we lose a lot of time because we have to decide as a human being which report reports something illegal. So you have to look at those reports. Luckily, my memory is still very good, so I have to look only 5-6 seconds at the video clip to say, yes, I know this is not illegal, this is illegal. Then when I made this triage between illegal and legal, all the illegal ones go into the AviaTOR system, so we can prioritize based on 3 main parametric systems, and each one it's modular, so we can decide ourselves. Each law enforcement using the system can decide which parameter to use in their country, because legislation, like Discord said, is different in every country. So even in my huge country, Belgium, the legislation is not always the same in the north and the south. So you have to be able to choose yourself which parameters are the most important, and this is a challenge, because the biggest example you can give on that is an image is not known in the database, can mean 2 things. It has been never reported, or it's really nothing. So that's why the human eye still stays very important. And it's also the thing, I think it's at the basis of the huge raising in the number of reports and the going down of the illegal reports, because the big platforms do not check anymore. They just let AI do their thing, with this result that it comes out to us. It's also very important, within the system of AviaTOR, we have meetings once a year for the moment between the different law enforcement units using tools, specific AviaTOR, but any other tool, and we learn from each other. Because prioritizing looks easy, but it's not. And sometimes, for example, I got a question from a unit saying, hey, what is more important, this one or this one? So you have to learn, and I myself adapt the system practically every week, because I learned that results coming out of prioritization is not what I want. So that's something important, and it's also very important to share that information, share that knowledge with colleagues from other countries, because we all facing the same problem all over Europe, all over the world. When I talk to my colleagues in every country has a lot of problems with these reports. Yeah. Then an issue which is very important for me, and I hope I work together with the Commission to make a kind of standard report system, because now for the moment, every report, every platform has its own way of reporting. It's not that easy to have a tool. We have 2 tools. We have AviaTOR to help us prioritizing, but even that is not always working because of the content of the report changing. And we have a tool. In Belgium, we have to work together. We have to work with the prosecutor to get the identification of IP addresses, email addresses, and telephone numbers. So this tool is really searching all these reports and put all these reports by ISP. But if they change something, if they put the IP address or the email address in chapter 6 instead of chapter 7, the tool doesn't find it anymore. So we have to change the tool all the time. That's why we insisted that something about report standardization should be in the upcoming European legislation. I worked, and mainly the idea is that a report should consist of 3 very important chapters. The first chapter, every information you have to give, if you have it, of course, by law. If you don't have it, don't report, because no use. The second chapter is giving all the information that can be important if you have it. And the third one, everything else. And that's the main thing. And now we see, for example, that Facebook has the most complete reports, but they have the less positive reports. Discord is not because you're in the room, but you don't have that much reports. But if you see Discord, we take it, prioritize it, because we know if Discord reports it, we have to look at it. So that's also something the companies can do a lot about it. And like I think I'm convinced what Josh says, that it's a better safe than sorry principle. We will report everything, so we cannot be blamed if we forget to report something. Thank you. The upcoming EU legislation, it should have been ready by August of this year. Forget it, it will be ready by August of this year. The main challenge is for me as a law enforcement agent is that we should find a balance. We should restore the balance between the right of privacy, which is an absolute right for everybody, and crime fighting. Because it has been said this morning by, I forgot his name, in the first discussion I followed, you have to find crimes on the internet, for example in grooming, and grooming is chatting in the first stage. But the privacy nights, the white nights of privacy in Europe don't allow you to monitor chats, because it's an infringement of the private life. So we have to restore the balance, and I can assure you, none of my colleagues all over Europe, at least all over Europe, we don't want a big gun like in the times of the sheriffs in the United States, the one with the big gun went. We need clear procedures to find it, and clear procedures on one side, and of course the willingness of the platforms to do something as well. But I cannot imagine that any of the platforms active, working with all those young people over the world, want that their platforms is attacked by child abuse. To be honest, Discord is a gaming and a chat platform. This is not normal that this platform is abused for exchanging child abusive material to contact children. So we need the arms, the companies that make the tools for us, the platforms, and also we need the armory to fight this kind of crime. And for the moment, the situation as follows. For us, law enforcement, there's a bank, there's a hold-up. Inside are 4 gangsters with machine guns, and we have to go in with a knife. That's for the moment the situation. Thank you.
That's a very nasty comparison, Yves, but it describes the work and also the upcoming legislation. Well, I had a discussion yesterday night with Arda. The question is still, is there a legislation coming? But if you compare the proposed legislation, I already said it in the beginning, so it applies to all providers that want to do business in Europe. So they don't have to have their office in Europe, but they need a legal representation. And the law says that you have to check if your platform is susceptible for abuse and whether actual abuse takes place, and then there is monitoring, or I don't know exactly the term, the enforcing the checking. But if a same attitude comes into place as in America, where there's proactive searching on their platform, I think the number of reports for law enforcement will dramatically increase. And moreover, they might come in from different channels. That's already the case now. Yves gets the report from Europol, the Dutch police gets them from NECMEC. Europol used to have a relatively long delay on supplying the reports, but they're now going to do deduplication over countries, which is also important, because if 10% is unique, but so every 9 of 10 reports contain the same content, and these 10 reports go to 10 different countries, 10 law enforcement agencies have to do the work. So the fact that only 10% is unique doesn't mean there's only 10% of the work. But if an organization like Europol does a good job, they can deduplicate that and make sure that companies are aware that reports are already sent to other countries, for instance. Europol just started doing that. They will announce that, I think, in June with the EU CARE project. We show the results of their work in AviaTOR, so all the central work that Europol is doing, all the information they're adding to a report, we can show that to the law enforcement agencies that use AviaTOR. So there's still a lot of work to be done.
I just want to add something. You said something which I forgot to say. It's very important. Each platform that wants to work in Europe, at least at the ID with the upcoming, has to have a point of contact. But this is, of course, the first step. But the second step is enforcing that obligation. Because for the moment, one of the most famous platforms has a point of contact in Belgium. But they don't answer your mails, they don't answer your requests. So it has to be enforced, and there has to be something behind. If you don't reply to official requests, to legal requests from law enforcement agencies, then you should be kicked out. And that's part of the platforms to be responsible of. It's easy to have an office, but if you put somebody there who doesn't know what it's all about, and he or she never replies to your requests, then you better close the office and save the money you pay for the rent.
Yeah, now maybe as a last word, as said, AviaTOR is a project sponsored by the European Commission. We had 2 funding rounds. There's 2 technology companies in there. That's WebIQ. They are specialized in OSINT collection. So they collect, for instance, LinkedIn information on persons reported on other platforms to check if they can find the profession of a person and whether a person works for a school, a scouting club, or whatever. We do the official intelligence part, so we make the AI CSAM classifiers. We use the photo DNA. We process videos. And we have, of course, the Belgium and the Dutch police as a specialist, knowing the problem and knowing what they need to do to make the problem less. InHope is also part of the project. They do the dissemination. They organize all the training. We have a law firm in there that helps us in explaining to us what we're allowed to do with AI and with OSINT and what we're not allowed to do. But most important, from the start of the project, we started organizing affiliates. Those are law enforcement agencies that get the software for free. They only have to set up their own hardware. And at the moment, we have around 20 law enforcement agencies using AviaTOR, mostly in Europe, but also the state troopers of Alaska, the state of Kerala in India, the Emirates are using AviaTOR. And the goal is to, by the end of the project, it ends in August this year, to have 25 to 30 law enforcement agencies using the product. The AviaTOR will continue as a commercial product, but we will provide support to the current users at a non-commercial rate for the next 2 years. So that's what we could say about our side of the equation. So if there are questions, we would be happy to take them. Yeah, go ahead. Oh, that's
Yeah, hi. Stefan Dugam, the CEO of Cyber Peace Institute, but I was in Europol before. I was heading the EU Internet Referral Unit. I have a question concerning how you think that AI can also help to protect people looking at this content at scale. Because you were saying that more and more you are going to have like false flags. The quality is very fuzzy in terms of what is real, what is not real, what you need to say it's illegal, not legal. How do you embed in the process the protection of the people looking at this content to make the decision making? I'm talking about psychological support, psychological safety, cognition safety, etc.
Technical first.
Yeah, on the technical side, it's very difficult to make a good classifier for a starter, because you need actually the scientist. This morning there was the idea of letting a classifier being trained by the people that are actually doing the classification work. But if you work with images, you also need scientists to look at the images, and they are not particularly happy to do so because the images are horrible. So the problem of making a good classifier is really a big challenge. And I hope that we can extend the AviaTOR project to extend annotation process with more hotlines and with more police forces to increase the quality of the classifier. And if you do that, you can prevent people to have to look at the same material over and over again, but also to help people to prioritize and to focus on only those things that they need to see. Because what Yves said, you can't process all reports. So even if you have a questionable classifier, it still can help. But the question with a classifier is always not what you find, it is what you miss. Because if you miss things, you miss it on a structural basis, and that is the most horrible thing you can do. So that's the technical part. It's not easy.
Operational part, you have to be very careful because AI, even at a very high level today, better than 5 years ago, of course, it still makes big mistakes, and we have to be very careful. Everything that's done by AI has to be checked for the moment and will have to be checked in the next few years by a human eye. The only thing that, one thing that AI can do for us is limit the number of things you have to look at. They give a score, and that's the thing you can do. But even there, you have to be very careful. I give an example. In one of the ZEO systems, it's a basic form of AI. They let us find images without persons on it. So in theory, when you don't have a person on the picture, you can't have views on the picture. But at a certain level, it starts to overrule a page of pictures with little pictures in it. And each little picture shows a girl or a boy being abused. The system, the AI says, this is not a person. So those are the things you have to be very careful for. And I can imagine, I'm not technically smart enough to say that maybe in a few years it will be possible, but for the moment, the human eye stays still very important. AI for the moment is only there to help us, if, of course, we can find the legal basis to use it, because apparently that's much more difficult to give a legal basis for law enforcement than to give a legal basis for everybody else.
Thank you so much for this presentation.